Okay, yeah. Who's that? Who's that? نبدأ. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. So as we continue from what we had started from last Saturday in the seminar that we had, where we're discussing matters that relate to ahkam as-siyam. So we had discussed certain things that relate to as-siyam regarding of what is siyam, what are some of the sunan regarding preparation for the virtue of siyam. Also we discussed of those people the arkan of siyam and the likes. Then we had ended where we started a discussion regarding mubtilat as-siyam, so those acts that will invalidate the person's siyam. So we started that discussion. So we try to pick up from there regarding what have been mentioned by the ulama based upon the text that I've mentioned, some of those things that nullify the person's siyam. So of those things that we started with first, of those acts that nullify siyam that we had mentioned, what we mentioned, al-akl wa shurb. So of those things that are listed regarding of those things that nullify the person's siyam, akl wa shurb, the person eating and drinking. That would be the first. And we had mentioned regarding that eating and drinking nullify the person's siyam, that if it is done, amdan, if the person did so intentionally, so the person intentionally went and drank, then their person, or eat, then their siyam is invalid. Meaning also, if the person was to do so unintentionally, then all this will not invalid the person's siyam, as we had mentioned hadith. So that's concerning of those things that are mentioned, of those acts that nullify the person as siyam. The next of those things, so you have 1 and 2, eating and drinking. Of the ulama we include within eating and drinking that will nullify the person's siyam, that it include concerning the person who smokes. So the person who's smoking, so smoking while fasting will be included of those things that will be classed as the person eating and drinking, and that will nullify the person's siyam. So those are of those things that are included in this act regarding of the person that nullify his siyam by the person smoking or taking a fag, as they refer to it as, or anything else. So the person wants to smoke weed or a spliff or whatever else that they may smoke, all of those things will will invalidate the person as siyam. The next of those things that they mention, of those things that invalidate the person's siyam, that so they mention regarding concern a person, a discussion between the ulama, if the person was intentionally was to eat and or drink, then that person have to make up that day that they ate and drink. So the person was to eat or drink intentionally, then his siyam is considered to be invalid. As for what to be done in that case, so one, after Ramadan, Jumhur of the ulama take the position that the person must make up that day. So the person have to make up that day ate or drank during fasting. But that day, so that's one, and that's Jumhur of the ulama. Then the next, so that's Jumhur of the ulama regarding that matter. We mentioned Jumhur, and that is not agreed upon between the ulama. The person needs to make up that day. Nam, so Jumhur of the ulama take the position that a person needs to make up that day because of them doing this act of eating and drinking while fasting. The next of those things that they discuss, the person who ate or drank while fasting, then the person also, with Jumhur of the ulama, the person is not allowed, he still has to observe imsak for the rest of the day. So the person, imsak, the person should not eat nor drink or do any doing for the rest of the day. So the person, for example, the person during the day, midday, they ate intentionally or drank something. So for the rest of that day, until that the person have to stay up, the person cannot eat and drink for the rest of that day. He has to still observe imsak for the rest of that day. That's the call also of Jumhur of the ulama regarding that particular matter. So those are those matters that links to eat and drinking. So if we mention that the person have to make up that day, that's called Jumhur of the ulama. Also, the person have to still abstain from eating and drinking for the rest of that day, even though he ate. And also that's the call of Jumhur of the ulama. The ulama, they can. So that's the call Jumhur of the ulama. The next of the matter that they discuss, that even though with that matter you find the Ahnaf and Ishaq, Ibn Rahuya or Rahuya, that they have the opinion regarding concerning that, and for the person who ate and drank intentionally in the days of Ramadan, that person, one, he have to make qada of making up that day, and also for them al-kafara. So the person who ate, drank during the day of Ramadan, then with the Abu Hanifa and a group of the ulama, that person have to one, and also they mention Imam Malik and also Malik between them, that person have to make up that day, and also added to this al-kafara. They have to make kafara on this matter. But qawl al-jumhur, there is nothing per se that states regarding kafara on this matter. So the view of Jumhur of the ulama is the correct view. The person only needs to make up that day. The person only needs to make up that day. The next of the matter that they discuss, of those things that relates to things that nullify the person's siyam, that a person who al-qay, ta'ammud al-qay, the person who vomits intentionally. So the person who causes himself to vomit. So they mentioned that, and this could be the person that he may sniff something and cause himself or allow himself to take in certain type of odor that will somewhat cause him to throw up. So the person who intentionally cause himself to throw up, to vomit, then that person siyam is considered to be invalid. If it came up on its own accord, then according to Jumhur of the ulama, the person siyam is still valid. And they use that dalil regarding the hadith that is mentioned by Abu Hurairah anhu, and Nabi Sallallahu qal, man dara'u al-khay, that man dara'u al-khay, that the one that the vomit, it comes out on its own, فَلَيْسَ عَلَيْهِ قَضَى, that there's nothing to be made up. وَمَنِ اسْتَسْقَى عَمْدًا فَلْيَقْضِي, but the one who caused himself to vomit, then amdan, intentionally, then he has to make this up. So that's the hadith that is used. And this hadith is the hadith is the clear, the hadith that is used regarding the case of a person who causes himself to vomit, then the person that day is considered to be invalid, and also the person have to make up that day. Now, so said that's the deal that is used by Jumhur of the ulama. But they mentioned regarding concerning this hadith that there's some discussion regarding the authenticity of this hadith. There's some discussion regarding this particular hadith. So this hadith that is mentioned, the hadith in the Ahmad, and also Al-Arba, Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, Ibn Majah, Nasa'i. And also called Ad-Daraqutni, At-Tim rahimahullah mentioned hadithun hasan al-gharib, that kind of somewhat I like there's some weakness in the hadith. When At-Tim rahimahullah use the word hasan al-gharib, at times it indicates that the hadith has weakness. And also you'll find concerning that even though some of the ulama, they all al-Hakim, all the hadith to be authentic, al-Hakim, all the hadith to be authentic, Ad-Daraqutni rahimahullah qal rawatuhu thiqat, that the narrator that they are thiqat. But saying this statement, rawatuhu thiqat, that the narrators are thiqat, it doesn't mean the hadith is authentic. So if a muhaddith, a person of hadith, that they were to say that the rawat, the narrators are thiqat, that does not mean the hadith is authentic. That's just some of the condition for a hadith being authentic, not all the condition. So the rawat, the narrators being thiqat, being people are reliable, trustworthy, and good memory, that's just some of the condition that is set, that is regarding authenticating hadith, but that's not all the conditions. So that per se statement doesn't mean the hadith becomes automatically authentic. Then you find that like Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, la arahu mahfuz. So Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, that he mentioned la arahu mahfuz. So meaning concerned that he doesn't mahfuz, that he doesn't see the hadith as being authentic. So Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, and also Ahmed rahimahullah qal isnaduhu wahm, that there's an error in the isnad. So you find that so that's concerning that discussion regarding then I mentioned asahu shay, that the most authentic shay fi dhalik on this matter al-Malik, al-Nafi, and Ibn Omar. So in reality the hadith that is mentioned about this matter is actually a statement of Ibn Omar, that they mentioned the most authentic thing regarding vomiting, that it breaks the person fast, that this is more so the statement of the Sahabi. As for it being a hadith, going back to the Prophet ﷺ, as we mentioned, there's some discussion on that matter, and that a hadith is weak. So, but I mentioned also that Ibn Mundhir rahimahullah, that in his book Al-Ijma, mentioned that there's an ijma on this matter, regarding if the person was to cause himself to throw up, to vomit, then his siyam is invalid. So he said that, so those who mentioned that is an ijma, there's a consensus between the ulama on this matter, there's an agreement between the ulama on this matter. So instead of using the hadith because of its weakness, they look to the next evidence, even though most of the books of hadith will mention this hadith as being the primary source to say that vomiting nullify the person wudu. So the hadith is weak. It goes back to Ibn Umar, as they mentioned, and Malik and Nafi and Ibn Umar, but also they add to the evidence that they use is that there's an ijma, as mentioned by Ibn Munzir. But also that ijma, they mention that there is some khilaf on the matter, so they say ijma also that is questionable. But overall, we said that's the practice, that's the view of Jumhur of the ulama, that the person who vomits then is cause himself to vomit, his siyam is invalid. And also the person I mentioned, as for what to be done, the person have to make it up according to what is mentioned in the hadith. So that's of those matters that are discussed. The fourth and fifth of those things that nullify the person's siyam, al-hayd wal nifas. So a lady who experience, who are hayd or menstrual cycle have started or already started before Ramadan enters, then she doesn't fast the days that she's experiencing her menstrual cycle, whether at whatever point during Ramadan. So at whatever point it's present or she's experiencing her menstrual cycle in Ramadan, then she does not fast, even to the extent that if she started the day fasting, and just say we end fasting at 6 o'clock. Fast, it ends at 6 o'clock. And she started the day fasting. And her cycle starts at 5:55. 5 minutes out from iftar. Then that day is invalid. And she has to make up that day is invalid. And that's of those things so that's concern of the ahkam that relates to this. So that's concerning that the ahkam that relates to an-nifas, regarding the lady who's experiencing discharge after having a child, and also her normal menstrual cycle. So that's concerning that matter that is somewhat well known. So we won't go into much detail on this matter. The next of those matters that they discuss, which would be the sixth. So regarding al-hayd wal nifas is somewhat well known. So the lady who's going through this, then she does not fast. What to be done in that case? Then she will make up later. So after Ramadan, she will make up the days that was missed because of her menstrual cycle. Regarding the woman who's going through in pregnancy or breastfeeding, we'll discuss that separate. We'll discuss regarding the female who's in pregnancy, experiencing pregnancy, or still breastfeeding. We'll discuss that separate inshallah ta'ala. So as for the next, they mention man ta'ammud al-istimna, which is istimna is the person who does it's of a, what's the word in English? Discharge. But ejaculation. So that type of act. So the person wants to go through an ejaculation with the kids. Make sure that they learn late. So as for that act, then also this is including regarding, does this act nullify the person's siyam or not? So the person wants to go through this act. So you have some tafsir regarding concern that of the ulama, they mentioned that which is not per se the person having sexual relation, but the person having that discharge of semen outside intimacy, without the person having any direct intimacy. So regarding concern this matter, that you find that Jumhur of the ulama that states that the person that have this experience ejaculation, that their siyam is invalid. Now the evidence that they use, that they mention concerning the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that mention that it mentioned regarding concerning the hadith that they mentioned that من لم يدع قول الزور وعمل به أنا mentioned يدها طعامه وشرابه وشهوته من أجلي. So one of the hadith that mentioned regarding concerning that discussed concerning the virtue of siyam, hadith al-Qudsi, that mentioned concerning that كل عمل ابن آدم له, that hadith, that all the acts of the children of Adam is for him, that of the wording that I mentioned, yada, he have left away طعامه وشرابه, he have left away his food, his drink, وشهوته من أجلي, that he have left away his food, drink, and I mentioned shahwa is desire, min ajli, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nam, so it mentioned regarding concerning Isyam, the thing that he should avoid during Isyam. And that narration in Sahih Bukhari, that narration in the Sahih Bukhari and Muslim, min hadith Abu Hurairah. They mentioned regarding concerning the word shahwa, that they mentioned the word shahwa would include ejaculation. And I mentioned that to prove of this, they mentioned another hadith that mentioned regarding that, discussed concerning that the discharge of semen mentioned وَفِي بِعْدْ أَحَدِكُمْ صَدَقَةً. And they discussed about concerning, and they mentioned that then the people said to the Prophet ﷺ يَأْتِي أَحَدُنَا شَهْوَتُهُ يَكُونَ لَهُ أَجْرٌ, that one of us was to approach our family, is there reward for this? And they use the word shahwa. And they're discussing about shahwa, they're talking about intimacy. Nam, so the word shahwa, nam, then you can take the meaning regarding a person involved in intimacy. So they said the word shahwa in the hadith that goes back, that relates to siyam, yadaha, ta'amahu wa sharabuhu wa shahwatuhu, then this also includes ejaculation. That's the call of Jumhur of the ulama. Then you find that Ibn Hazm rahimahullah, they said Ibn Hazm of the Zahiriyah, that all concerned that this act, it is not considered to be intimacy with a person, with intimacy in the sense of direct penetration. So they mention that it does not invite the person's siyam, because the person is not actually penetrating the other person. So the person's siyam is still, that's it, the person's sawm, it is still valid because he didn't per se have penetration by way of intimacy. So that's concerning that matter. Then I mentioned وَلَمْ يَأْتِي بِذَلِكَ النَّص, but Ibn Hazm rahimahullah, he argued that there's no specific text on this matter, وَلَا إِجْمَاء, and there's no consensus on this matter, وَلَا قَوْلَ الصَّاحِبْ وَلَا قِيَاسِ. He kind of somewhat said there's no evidence for it. So that's concerning the position of Ibn Hazm rahimahullah regarding that ejaculation that does not nullify the person's siyam. I would say that's the call of Jumhur of the ulama is contrary to this. That it does. So Jumhur hold that the person's siyam is invalid. So that's concerning that matter. And I mentioned, so that's concerned, so that's of those things that are mentioned of amongst those things that invalid the person's siyam. The next of those things that they discuss, they mention and niyyah, but they go to discuss next Ar-ridda. So the next amongst those things that nullify the person's siyam are ridda and in Islam. So the person who have left Islam, and we somewhat spoke about that in the last lesson. So the person who have left Islam, what it is, and in this case would be the person left, apostated from Islam during Ramadan. The person who apostate from Islam during Ramadan, then from the time, then their siyam is invalid. So the person on that day, the 10th day of Ramadan, they decide to leave the fold of Islam. Then from the 10th of Ramadan onwards, then from that day, his siyam is invalid. So they mentioned that as for that person, if he was to come back to Islam, so the person have apostated, right? The 10th of Ramadan. And from that time he left, and that was 3 years ago. That was 3 years ago. He has to make up the rest of that month of Ramadan, plus also those other years that have passed. According to some of the ulama. So they say al-murtad and a kafir asli, they treat them different. Murtad is an apostate who at some point claimed Islam, then have left Islam. As for the person who's a kafir asli, then he was never Muslim, so the rules, they see the rules as different regarding this matter. Some of the ulama, they put a distinction between those cases. So overall, regarding the person who have left of those things that invalid the person's siyam, is the person who have left, that invalid the person's siyam, the person who have left Islam. The person who have left Islam. The next of those things that they discuss, where I mentioned that most of what are discussed, they mentioned this case. They mentioned that a person that yubtil as-sawm wa alayhi qada. That a person, in the case that we have mentioned previously, that those cases what apply, the person's siyam for that day and what follows after that day would be invalid, and also for them to make qada, to make up that day that was missed for what they did. In the case that we have mentioned before, the cases mentioned. As for the next set of cases they mentioned regarding that yubtil, these acts, yubtil as-sawm wa yujib al-qada wal kaffara. So you have acts that the person was to fall into them, it will nullify his siyam for that day, and also is to make up and also do kaffara. Clear? So he has to do two things according to some as to be discussed. So they mentioned that case where this will apply, that there's kaffara, is the case of al-jima. So the person will have sexual intercourse by way of penetration. Whether to the front or the back. Whether front or back penetration. That's just for clarity. Then I mentioned regarding concern. So as for this matter, discussed the matter of hadith of Abu Hurairah anhu, where I mentioned that the hadith concerned that بينما نحن جلوس in the Nabi Sallam إجاءه الرجل فقال. So they were sitting the Prophet Islam, and a man approached. فقال يا رسول الله أهلكت, that I've destroyed myself. قال ما لك, what happened to you? So he shows regarding that person come and he said, no, I think I've destroyed myself. It's like I'm saying, I fall into a serious error. So the Prophet Islam then questioned as to what it is. Malak, what is your situation? So you see, so it concerns the Mufti seeking clarity on a matter. That I mentioned, waqa'tu ala ibrati wa ana sa'im. That the person explained that I use the word waqa'tu, and like I said, that I had relations with my wife while I am fasting. فقال السلام التجد رقبة تعقها, that do you find a slave that you can receive release? فقال لا, he says no, there's no slave. هل تستطيع أن تصوم شهرين متتابعين, are you able to fast 2 consecutive months? The person says لا, I'm not able. قال التجد إطعام 60 مسكينة, are you able to provide food for 60 people? قال لا. Then he says also to this, everything, no. فقال عليه السلام فسكت النبي عليه السلام. So the Prophet go quiet for the person. وبينما نحن على ذلك, أوتي النبي السلام بأرق فيها تمر. So they brought, while they were there, they brought a basket with some tamar, and it was given to the person. Then I mentioned أين سائل, who is the person who asked the question. Then again, someone gave this to the person. Overall, that hadith, they mentioned that this hadith, it can somewhat indicate regarding that this person, he had relation with his wife while fasting. Nam. Then the Prophet ﷺ then asked the person then of those things, expiation or kafara, either you're able to free a slave. That's the first option. Second option that was given or put to the person, are you able to fast 2 consecutive months? The third option put to him, are you able to feed 60 poor people? And he said, so those are the options that was put to him. Those are the options that were given to him. So from this, that Jumhur of the ulama, that they are all concerned a person who fell into sexual relation with his wife during Ramadan while fasting, then that person, siyam for that day is invalid. Intentionally amdan, and he did intentionally amdan, then that person, that is siyam of that day is invalid. As for what, and I mentioned that was it intimacy, by way of intimacy where the part where the man actually penetrate the lady. So actual penetration. Nam. If a case, so we mentioned that the person, it is a bit, if the person, for an example, husband and wife during Ramadan taking a shower in the bath together. Nam, and they just rub. Nam, then that doesn't nullify their siyam. With me? They just touch. But no penetration. Clear?
We kind of went through this already, but I was having a discussion with the brother about this thing. So where it mentions about I fell into it while I was fasting, but if someone does, as you mentioned in the class, for example, they do a niyyah to jazima. So he purposely says, you know what? So I don't have to. Would it be? Does it the same kafara apply if he does this? Okay, I'm going to break my fast, not fasting. He breaks his fast, she breaks her fast, in order for them to have intimacy in the month of Ramadan. Obviously the day would be invalid, but do they still do what they would do if they were fasting and they've done it?
Hey, so you said the person, they're trying to, they want to have intercourse type of thing, but before they do the intercourse, they said, okay, let's break our fast.
Yeah.
Now, then that matter, take them to the judge. So you take them to a judge. Some said in those cases, a person could have ta'zir, but a person could be even a stricter punishment. You understand? So the person like not have ill intent, if you want to use that word, ill intent.
Because of their shahwa,
Hey,
they
say,
want to do 60 days, so you know what?
hey, something. So they say, take them to so those matters will go to a judge. You understand? To look at the matter, as they said, that ill intent, where the rule might apply, even though they did what they did. You understand? Or try to go around things. Yeah. So those matters go back to an alim or a judge to judge regarding the affairs. Where are we at?
You said having a shower.
Hey, so that's going to clarify regarding the concern in cases just by mere touching. It doesn't. That have to have penetration. Nam. So the next step they discuss concerning what is the kafara for them, for the person who fall into this. Then the ulama mentioned that one, that what applies in this case, that they have to make kafara. The kafara, as mentioned, that if he's able or it is available, and he's able to can release, free a slave, then that is done. That's the first option. Then that's the call of Jumhur ulama. And if the person is unable, then it goes to the next option, which is the next option would be that you fast 60 days. That 60 days fasting is from the time, so after the end of Ramadan, and at whatever point he decides to start. So after Ramadan, he says after Ramadan, the 5 days after, a few days after Ramadan, I'm going to start. From the time that he starts, he has to continue until he complete 60 days. If he decide, I did 20, I'm going to stop for a few days and have a break, then you have to start again. Unless that break must be for a valid reason. Shar'an. If the person gets ill, Naam. So the person that cannot, so if you have a valid reason, then yes, it doesn't, then that counts. If he doesn't have a valid reason to not fast, then he has to restart the cycle. Naam. So that's that matter. Then the third option, the third option we said is It'am Sittin Miskina. So the person feeds if he's unable to carry out the ones previously mentioned. Then the next option is that he feeds poor people provide food for 60 poor people. That can be done in one go or in portion. So the thing is that he has to get a maximum of 60 people. So you have to feed 60 people.
Minimum.
It is a minimum. He has to do 60 people as the minimum. So those are regarding concerning. So that's concerning that matter. Our next discussion regarding the day that he, for example, did the act. Does that day, so 60 days, for example, he's going to fast 60 days. Or does he need to add to that 60 days? Or if you're going to feed 60 people, does he have to plus add to that fasting an extra day, the day that he did the act in? With me? So the kafara is 60 days. For example, 60 days. Then that's for his kafara. But the day that he did the act, is that also to be added to the 60 day? Naam, khilaf between the ulama. Naam, so that extra day, is it to be added to the 60? Or is it to be added to feeding 60 people? So with this matter, that of the ulama, or that yes, the person should add this day. And I mentioned regarding concerning that in some of the narration of the same hadith that we just mentioned before, it mentioned Sum yawman makanu. Sum yawman makanu. That a person is to fast a day for the day that you did the act. So you must replace that day that you did the act with fasting another day for it separately. But that narration, it is mentioned, that narration that fi khilaf in the Darakutni, and the ulama mentioned that there's some discussion regarding that hadith or that additional wording. But I mentioned that fihi Hisham ibn Sa'id, Hisham ibn Sa'd, who is considered to be a weak narrator. Is considered to be a weak narrator, so that additional wording, Sum yawman makanu, that narration is weak. So they mentioned that the person only fasts, so those who owe the person only fast 60 days without that additional day. Because this narration is weak. So they said if because it's weak, then it's as if the Prophet did not say it. So it doesn't exist. According to those who hold it, but those who hold to it, they said the person has to fast that additional day. But said the narration is weak. So the more correct view, Allahu Alam, that the person does not need to add that day. Does not need to add that day. So just for him, kafara, and there's no qada alayhi. There's no qada alayhi. And that's the qawl of Ibn Hazm. That's the qawl of Ibn Hazm. Even though said Jumhur of the ulama, they see their position is a person has to do the kafara of one of those three things that were mentioned, plus he has to do al-qada, which is fast that additional day. Add an additional day. Both said the hadith that they use, that they mentioned the hadith they use, it is not valid. It is not valid. So you can't request the person of to do something where there's no dalil for it. There's no dalil for it. You are asking? You had your hand? Okay. When it comes back, inshallah.
My question is, they did it, and it's fast 60 days. Cool, he's saying, yeah, I got this, I'm strong, I can fast 60 days. If he falls into that act again in Ramadan, does it then double to 120 days?
Yes. So for each day is counted as separate. So each day is counted as a separate day. So the person did it on the 10th, and then on the 15th, then
That's 120 consecutive days.
then he just doesn't necessarily do the, yeah, then he just have to do the calculations. So each day is counted separately. Each day is counted separately. Of those matter, of the matter that relates to this that they discuss in this case concerning the hadith that we mentioned, that the Prophet Islam that you are addressing concerning the man who brought the case to him. Nam, so of the ulama all that the person so who is to fulfill these kafara. Nam, so of the ulama who mentioned that the hadith is addressed, the Prophet Islam was addressing the man that came to him. So they mentioned that this rule applies only to the man. So what he does will compensate for the woman. So it's only upon him to go through what is required and not her, because the Prophet ﷺ didn't mention about her in the hadith. Only discussed about what the man should do. So the older person that it's only upon the man to fulfill the things that were mentioned. Free, release a slave. What was said? Fast or feed is upon the man. Nam. Then that's one of the code of the ulama regarding of that, and that's so that's the first view of the ulama regarding that it's only upon laysa ala mar'a, it's not upon the woman. Regarding the kafara, it's only upon the man. That's the madhab of the Imam Shafi rahimahullah. That's the madhab of Imam Shafi and Qawli Ahmed.
So Sheikh Omar, you said at the end of the hadith that some of the Sahaba came with tamar, so you can give to 60 people.
Aye.
So if you don't have the money, you can ask for it.
Yeah, the person. So the person, if they say, so the fasting is upon the person would be upon the person himself.
Yeah.
That the person is poor and people can and someone can provide that money for you to provide to feed the people, then that's not a problem. Nam, that still counts. The main thing that it is done. Nam, so it is done provided by the person himself from his own finance or from others, then both are satisfactory, both are allowed. So we're at. So I said the first view regarding that is the woman included. So I said of the view of the ulama that is upon the man only, not the woman, because the Prophet only spoke to the man or just the man, and not mention of the woman. Even though the person mentioned about his wife, but she was not mentioned as carrying out the kafara. Then the second view of the ulama, which is qawl jumhur of the ulama, and that's Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, qawl again of Shafi, Ahmed, in a more correct view, that they take a position that is upon both the man and the woman. So jumhur, majority of the ulama, take the position is upon the man and the woman. So they said that that even the Prophet ﷺ only addressed the woman, but the ahkam of Islam that they are across the board, that it's applied to both because both fell into the act. Now they make some difference between them. They mentioned that with khilaf they said tafasil, to look to see that was she. So the tafasil, the things to look at is, was she a willing participant or unwilling participant? Now, so if she was the husband said, okay, you come home, want to do some things. She said, mashi. So she was a willing participant. Then both of them have to fulfill what? The kafara. Both of them have to do it individually. Now, if the case where she was forced, she said no, but then he still did his thing. Then it's upon him, not her.
Yeah, you don't mean rape though.
Aim to that. Hey, that's the next. That's the next matter. So in this country, okay. So I said that. So I said that. Leave that aside now. But she wasn't per se a fully willing participant initially. With me. So it then go back to the same thing now. If you were the one who instigated, and he was not per se initially, and you agree with her, you become a willing participant. Then it's upon both. But instead, if he was an unwilling participant, which is an unwilling participant, but felt a bit pressured, that type of thing, then it's upon her. He start now. She was there. Just an example. He lie down. and she just understand she did her own thing. He was laying on sleeping, she did her own thing. Then it's upon her. So that's concerning this scenario. As if you need some example, if it does exist. Now, but the case will go, was the person a willing participant or an unwilling participant? Now, that's so that's concerning discussion between the ulama. So the person who made that case is to look to see were both participants, willing participant. The person who initiated, normally they are willing participant, but to see is the other side also, were they a willing participant? And it will decide as to, but generally it's upon both of them, unless there's a reason to say the other person was not a willing participant. The next of those things, so as for the tartib that they mentioned, is upon that. So those are tartib. They said that the Jumhur of the ulama, the person must follow those tartib regarding the first release a slave, 60 days fasting, or feeding of 60 people.
So Sheikh Omar, if you're able to do 60 days, then you can't take.
So the person cannot go to the next unless he's unable. Now, so the person said, I have money, so it's easier for me just to feed. Yeah? No, if you're fit enough, then you have to do the fasting. You have to do the fasting. So that if a husband was to, if a husband or wife was to kiss, then that's not then even intimate kissing. Now, if nothing happened, then that doesn't nullify the siyam, but best to avoid. Now, that doesn't require 60 days. That doesn't require. So the person was to, the person, whatever happened, get to his mind on both of them, and they start to kiss and get intimate, and then there's some ejaculation to see that if it is semen, or if it's semen, then the person's fast becomes invalid. But if it's just pre-menstrual discharge, his fast is still valid. Distinction between both. You with me? But he doesn't have to go through the kafara of 60 days. He only make up that day if he had semen discharge. Clear? What time is that? 8 or 7:45? 8 now? 8? Because that. Okay, next matter. So of those things that are discussed because of it, they discuss a matter which is hijama, but we'll come back to that one. We go to a matter to make sure that we're going to somewhat cover it as it is somewhat discussed many, or a lot of question or discussion regarding this matter, is the case regarding concerning of people, those is allowed for them to, or we discussed concerning hijama. So regarding the matter concerning hijama, of those things that are discussed, so of those matters regarding, does it nullify a person's siyam? Hijama, which is the person blood cupping. So the cupping, does this nullify the person's siyam? So you have some hadith on this matter between that I've narrated regarding concerning of cupping. So due to these hadith that relates to cupping, that you find the ulama that they disagree on this matter. They disagree as to hijama. Does it nullify the person's siyam or not? Does it nullify the person's siyam or not? We have a hadith of the Prophet we mentioned after al-hajim wal-mahjum, that the person that who's fasting by hijama, that his siyam is not, or hadith that are upon our Prophet regarding that after al-hajim wal-mahjum, that a person who's fasting, his fast is broken by him having hijama being done and the person who does it. So you have that hadith. Also you have a hadith upon Ibn Abbas anhu that mentioned Nabi Islam ihtajama huwa sa'im. With the Prophet Islam that he performed hijama while he was fasting. So those two hadiths seem to be contradicting. They said that the first hadith that of the ulama who authenticated, but the second hadith of Ibn Abbas is more authentic. The second hadith. So that's now the discussion to how to reconcile between them. So those who mentioned the hadith of Ibn Abbas is more authentic, so it is given precedent. Reconciling that the hadith after al-hajim wal-mahjum, that was a ruling, yes, they say if those who said the hadith is authentic, that a middle path, it means something which is makruh to do it. So one say it is the Prophet did it, and the other say the Prophet said not to do it, so a middle path of hukum becomes makruh. So it becomes makruh as a middle path to combine between both evidence. And those mentioned that to say as to which of them they mentioned that the hadith of Ibn Abbas is relating to the Prophet was during the time of Hajj. So it is more something he did later on, the last years of his life. So also it is given precedent as it abrogate what was mentioned before, as abrogate that the one who have it being done, which is hijama, and the one who does it, that the siyam for them is invalid. So you have that discussion between the ulama. So they mentioned that, so from this hadith, for those who hold the hadith from the Hanabila all concerned, the person would have hijama done, that their siyam is invalid. So anything that relates to removal of blood, like in today's time, so they mentioned a person doing hijama for whatever reason is not to be done. And if it is done, the person's siyam is invalid. Also, by extension, these type of the person now giving blood in Ramadan, then that also for them will deem your siyam to be invalid, because it's like blood is being taken. Those who make a distinction regarding if it's a large amount or small amount.
Is that even for medical purposes?
It's the person. So for medical reason. So for medical reasons, the person might go and give blood, or he has a blood test that requires for him to give some blood samples. So they mention that because that is the person blood being taken, being removed from the body, then that will fall into the same. They said according to that view. But you find after all that it doesn't. And those make a distinction if it is in large amount or if it is small amount, then no. But if it's in large amount, then they say then that needs to be looked at. The general thing, the person try to avoid it if possible. The person try to avoid it if possible. So in this case, go back to the person that based upon what view do you take? Do you take the view that hijama and what falls within this nullify your wudu? So anything that falls within not wudu, your siyam, depending on the person, the person view on the matter, depending on the person view on this matter.
So Sheikh Omar, if someone works in a hospital like a nurse in Ramadan, you shouldn't do blood.
Most of the cases, I said that is if the person if that's their job, it's going to be sometimes difficult. The person might work in a department that their job is to take blood samples. But a person, you go in the hospital, you see that some of those who does that are Muslim. So someone said that the person's job, they do it daily. They're taking people blood. My personal view, it doesn't nullify the person's siyam. It doesn't nullify the person's siyam. So especially the person who that's their field, it becomes difficult for them to say to the workplace for this month of Ramadan, I'm not going to be present. If they can do that, alhamdulillah. But you might find it difficult for a person to skip their job for the entire month because of trying to avoid this. If they can do it, alhamdulillah. But overall, I'm more towards the view that it does not nullify the person's siyam. Of those things that are discussed. So of drops that are used today, eye drops, so I mentioned that of the ulama mentioned that regarding concern eye drops, ear drops, nose drops, that anything that comes through the nose and the mouth into the body, then those things that nullify siyam. If it's through the eye or the ears, then they take the position it doesn't. So that comes the primary ear regarding if things go into the body is by way of the nose or the mouth, but through the eyes, the person have an eye drop, then that doesn't nullify the person siyam. The next of those things that they discuss regarding this matter is regarding al-hamil wal-murdi', regarding a lady who is said to be hamil, the pregnant lady, and the case of the one who's breastfeeding. So the lady who's so that will apply regarding so those cases become more so that if she's pregnant, had baby, and few years before she may, and she's able to make up, then that's the root. But you might find cases where that she's having pregnancy, pregnancy, or the babies, they're very close apart. That's the word. They're very close apart. So she had a pregnancy before that she's still breastfeeding, but then she's pregnant. By the time she got pregnant. By the time that baby, and that cycle may go on for a while. So it becomes difficult for her to make up. So in that case, so in the case of those concerns, now what's the ruling regarding the lady that is pregnant and also breastfeeding, especially the cases where that there's multiple, the time space between is short. So I mentioned regarding concern on this matter, regarding in that case what to be done for a lady who in those cases of she fear for her child and because of her pregnancy and also breastfeeding, then what to be done in those cases. So in those cases they mentioned regarding concerning that there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, Inna Allah Azza wa Jal wadaha al-musafir shatra salat, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have reduced for the musafir half of his salah. So the person of musafir, his salat have been reduced, which we then mentioned one al-musafir, one al-hamil, one al-murdi' as-sawm. And also it mentioned, and also for the musafir, the one that is pregnant and the one that is breastfeeding, also as-sawm. So also them have been excused from sawm. They have been excused from sawm, which is the person, the traveler, the lady who is pregnant, and also the one that is breastfeeding. So this hadith that they mentioned, that hadith in the Ahmed and the others, a discussion regarding that of the ulama, all hadith to be authentic or hasan. So all hadith to be authentic or sahih or hasan. So based upon that hadith, that you have a khilaf between the ulama regarding this matter, regarding the lady that is pregnant. What to be done in such case? So you have over khamsa aqwal, over 5 opinions regarding the lady that is pregnant or the one breastfeeding. The views are as follows. 1, alayhima qada wa it'am an kulli yawm miskina. So the first opinion is that both the pregnant and the one breastfeeding, that they are to make up the days that they missed in Ramadan, and also they have to feed a poor person for each day that is missed. So for them, qada and what? It'am. That's the view of the ulama. That's the qawl that is, they mentioned the qawl of Imam Malik, Imam Shafi wa Ahmed. Then you have a distinction between the Shafi'i and the Hanabila, where they make a distinction they mention if she fear for herself, then it's only upon her to make qada. But if she fear for her child, then it's qada wal it'am. So make that distinction. But that view, they combine between making up qada and also it'am. That she a poor person for each day that is missed. That's the first opinion. The second opinion, alayhima qada faqat, that is only upon them, or those upon them, meaning those ladies, the ladies that are pregnant and breastfeeding, that they only make qada. They only make up that as whenever they're able. So whenever time that they're able, then they'll just make it up. That's it. They do not feed a poor person. So she have close pregnancies. After, for example, 10 years, she has stopped. Then she do it after that 10 years. 6 years, 4 years. So whenever she stopped of a time that she's able, then that's the time for it to be done. And that doesn't necessarily mean she has to do them consecutively. Clear? But she has to make it up, and nothing else is required from her. That's a view taken by Awza'i wa Thawr, Abu Hanifa, Abu Thawr, and others that are of that opinion. And they use the hadith that we just mentioned regarding concern that, that for the musafir and for the lady that is pregnant and the one that is breastfeeding, that their sawm has been that they're excused from fasting. So the only thing for them is only qada. And then also they mention qiyas, in this case of the pregnant lady and the one breastfeeding, with that of either a musafir, as they are mentioned with a musafir. So they said we make qiyas with a musafir. So the musafir, that he makes up, and he does not feed a poor person. So that's their opinion. The third opinion, it mentioned alayhima it'am faqat duna qada. The third opinion holds that they feed a poor person for each day that is missed, even if it's consecutive years. So for example, first year, she does not think then she does feed a poor person for the days that she have missed. All the days that she have missed, she does feed a poor person. Even with this view that, for example, she's pregnant this year, she's pregnant now, and Ramadan starts, she can either decide that if she wants to feed a poor person now, then that's all upon her, and that's it. Just not for makeup later. Or if she thinks that I'm going to get pregnant now, even if she decides I'm going to get pregnant, I'm not going to get pregnant for the next 3 years, she just feed a poor person, and that's it. So that's the opposite that view of those who take this opinion. They mentioned Ibn Abbas, wa Ibn Omar, Qawl Ishaq, and also they mentioned this book, that's the view of Sheikh Albani, of the contemporaries. So, of those ulama who take the position that for the lady that is pregnant, what's upon her is that she feeds a poor person for each day, and that's it. They mentioned Ibn Abbas rahimahullah قال رخص للشيخ كبير والعجوز كبيرة, that there's some leniency or that are a respite for the one who's a sheikh kabir, an old person, male and an old woman, that is that في ذلك وهما يطيقان الصوم, that they're able to farm يفطر insha, that they, if they wish, they can يفطر, that they break, they do not fast, ويطعمان كل يوم مسكين, and that they feed a poor person for every day. That's the view taken of Ibn Abbas, that the ones who have a legitimate reason to break their fast, then they mentioned وَلَا قَضَى عَلَيْهِمَا, and there's no qada upon them. Then also he mentioned فَإِذَا كَانَ لَا يُطِيقَ الصَّوْمُ وَالْحُبْلَ وَالْمَرْضَى إِذَا خَافَتَا أطعم كل يوم مسكين, that they mentioned as for the lady that is pregnant and breastfeeding, and they fear fasting for them to feed a person for each day, and that's it according to his opinion. And that's concerning that athar of Ibn Abbas in the Ibn Jarud wal Bayhaqi and Sheikh Albani, and they authenticate that narration. So based upon this, they hold that for the pregnant lady and breastfeeding, they feed a person for each day that is missed, that they are unable to fast, for every day that they are unable to fast. The fourth opinion, qada al-hamil wal qada وَالْإِطْعَامُ عَلَى مُرْضِعٍ. They make it so that the fourth opinion that they state that there's qada, the days to be made up that were missed for the lady that is pregnant, and qada wal it'am, and making up and feeding for the one that is breastfeeding. So they make a distinction. So the one that is pregnant, what's upon her, she makes it up after, at some point. As for the one that is breastfeeding, she makes qada, make it up, and also what? Feed. Aye. That's the qala bihi al-Malik, وهو قول in the Shafi'iyya, and also is the view of some of the ulama, the Shafi'iyya. The fifth opinion, ليس عليهما قضاء ولا إطعام. The fifth opinion, ليس عليهما, that there's nothing upon the lady that is pregnant and breastfeeding, قضاء ولا إطعام. There's nothing upon them. They do not make up, nor do they feed anyone. And that's the call of Ibn Hazm. That's the call of Ibn Hazm rahimahullah. Where they mention إذا سقط الصوم, as they said, if صوم سقط, then there is nothing upon them. So they said the hadith that we mentioned, إن الله عز وجل وضع عن المسافر شطر الصلاة. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have removed from the musafir half his salat. وعن مسافر والحامل والمرضع صوم. And they mentioned that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have وضع upon the musafir, the hamil, the pregnant lady, and the breastfeeding صوم. And there's no mention of what for them to compensate for. There's no mention of compensation.
So he basically says there's no qada for this.
There's no qada, there's nothing for them.
For the one who's musafir either.
Hey, no, it's because they have other dalil regarding concerning that for the musafir that clarify that they still make up. But in these two cases, there's no evidence what they do. So the two cases of the female, pregnant and breastfeeding, there's no mention of what to be done in their case. As for the musafir, there's other texts about them making up. So that's concerning that discussion on this matter. So that is matter regarding to say that they have to, then go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Rasul alayhi salam, and there's nothing. According to Ibn Hazm. So that some of those views, so those are the aqwal of the ulama on that matter. Those are the aqwal of the ulama on that matter. As for the act of qada wal it'am, they find it in most texts that you don't find combining between those. Regarding concerning a person who missed a day in Siyam, for a person to fulfill it, do those two acts together. You have to make up and also feed. There's no clear text on those things.
I was thinking the fourth one for the breastfeeding woman was both of them, and I think that's a bit harsh, isn't it?
Sorry?
Because the fourth one you mentioned, you said
The fourth?
yeah, the fourth one.
The fourth position.
Yeah, the fourth position.
Which is?
The breastfeeding woman has to do the two of them.
Hey, they make a distinction between the breastfeeding and the pregnant ladies. The pregnant lady, she make up. Hey.
Breastfeeding had to make up and
No. He didn't say that. He said the one who's hamil does one, and the one who's mudibid does the other. Not both. Sure, both.
Now, so the fourth one, qada al-hamil. So there's qada to be done for the one that is pregnant. She only makes qada, makes up. And mention wal qada wal it'am ala murda. And for the one that is breastfeeding, then she do both.
yeah, I was thinking that's a bit harsh.
Sometimes think about combining between both of making up and breast and feeding. Then said to find texts that mention these two, you might find that no clear text on those matters. To combine between both of making up the days and also feeding. The text for those ones are not there's not clear text for those. So either this option or that option. Either you make up or you feed. Nam. There's another view, but not mentioned here, where from what I can recall, that of the ulama who hold that the person that they have a choice between making up or, with the call I think of Ishaq, that and also one of Rata Ahmed that have a choice regarding making up. If they're able to make up, they do so. Or if not, unable to make up, then they feed a person for each day. That qawl, Allahu Alam, seems, in my opinion, more balanced. Nam. So it will be a combination. But those are the aqwal of the ulama on that matter. Nam. Those are the aqwal of the ulama on that matter. Depending on who you go back to, depending on the view that they take.
Yeah, so none of them is harsh.
As for Senator, as for the one that if we're in critiquing the views, the first view, which is what's the first view? Alayhima qada wal it'am. Nam, that's combined between both, because there's no clear, explicit dalil for that. They can't impose it, just like that. Nam, so that one that one requires clear dalil to say the person has to do this and that together. And in most cases, the dalil regarding a person who missed a day is either that you feed a person, or even concern the case of the person who did the more severe case, the person regarding intimacy. It's not that you have to do both. You do one of them. Either you fast or you feed, but not to combine between both. And that's even a worse scenario. A more severe case. So in most cases it is you have either one or the other. But to combine between both, you understand, then it requires a more explicit dalil. Going back to the surah itself with the Prophet ﷺ on that matter. So as for the second view is just for them to make up whenever they're able, or the third view is just for them to feed, then those ones seems more in line with the essence of the Sharia of one of the other option. But to combine between both, then you need some more clear-cut dalil. To require both need more clear-cut dalil. Allahu Alam. What time is?
Adhan 7:45.
Okay.
Before Adhan, maybe you can answer that quickly. I mean, like with does that mean with the only case that we do have kafara is the case of breaking fast by intimacy?
Hey, that's the case. That's the case that I mentioned.
Okay, are there any other cases? Just that.
Hey, that's the only one regarding concerning kafara. That's the only case that is mentioned regarding intimacy.
And with the istimna, the ejaculation purposely, obviously, does that require kafara, or that there's khilaf bin ulama because of it is the khilaf even?
أي ليس فيه كفارة الصحيح ليس فيه كفارة قضاء فقط نعم حتى ابن هزم قال ليس فيه شيء أي ابن هزم أي well, what time is that done? Okay. After that, I will just mention some quick case regarding Musafir and Marid. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalam rasulillah wa ba'd. So of those things that that they mention regarding concerning of other cases regarding of those that are there's an allowance for them to break their fast or not to fast. So you have certain allowance. There are certain cases where a certain group of people are allowed not to fast due to their situation and circumstance. So of those cases, they mentioned that the person was marid. So the person, as the ayat mentioned, that so the person who's marid, which is the person who's ill. So they mentioned in brief regarding concern the person who's ill that either a person that have an illness that there's no foreseeable from what has been mentioned, it's a critical illness and there's no there's no that there's a cure for the person. So the person is ill. As for a form of cure, then there's nothing that is there for the. There's no cure for the person. So that type of case. So in that case, that the person have a critical illness where he's unable to fast, then and there's no cure for that illness, then the person there's no fast upon them. Because it's not a temporary illness, is a one which is a continuous, a permanent illness. So for that person, for each Ramadan, he just feed a poor person. Mention وَمَنْ كَانَ مَرِيدًا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام الأخر. So Allah one mentioned, and the one who's ill or the one who's traveler, that they make up what is after. But as for the person who's marid and his illness is one which is uncurable, and it is a critical one that is unable to fast, then that person he feeds a poor person for each day that is missed. Preferable for the person in that case that so it is not to be done before Ramadan starts. For example, Ramadan starts Monday, and a person have an illness that is unable to fast. He doesn't feed the people this weekend before Ramadan. It has to be done either each day or at the end. So it's not to be done before, but it has to be done either during Ramadan or after. That's for the then the second case, the person have an illness where it is critical, but it is a temporary illness. The person was got in an accident. He's in hospital, so he's unable to fast. But it is expected that he'll recover after a few months and he'll be up again. Then the person, in that case, he doesn't fast, but he makes it up when he recovers, because they expected recovery.
If it is about a few years after 3, 4 years,
He still
have to make
he still make it up. So whenever he recovers, it's an expected recovery. It's expected recovery from that illness, so he makes it up. Then the third case is the case where the person is have an illness, but it's a slight illness. The person went go and play football and kind of somewhat not even broken. Sprain his leg, sprain his foot. Then it's considered to be an injury, but it's not severe. So the person, he still fasts. So might be walking and hopping, or you understand?
So he needs like a painkiller to stop the pain.
And so then it was depending on how severe that pain is. So it's something that is the person can bear, or it's something the person is unbearable, and he needs that painkiller. But he will be the one, so to look to see is that case as to how severe it is. That will affect the person. It will affect the person from fasting that day. Then in that case, then be looked at and choose what is best. So that's concerned case of illness. So case of illness with a person that is unable to fast at all. So he makes up, then he doesn't fast, but he pays for a poor person for each day. A case that is a severe illness, but there's expected recovery. Then a person, he makes it up when he has recovered. The third case, the person is ill, slight illness. He has flu, cold. Then he fasts. He still fasts.
Let's say the person has incurable disease.
Aye.
And he cannot feed anybody. He's poor as well.
Then and there's no one that can pay on his behalf? If there's no one, then khalas, then there's nothing upon him. Then there's nothing upon that person. Because he cannot do none of the above. Then, so that's concerning illnesses. So our next case where a person is exempt regarding fasting, or you have some exemption regarding fasting, is again mentioned, man kana maridan aw ala safarin. That the second case, the person upon safar. So the person who's a traveler. So the person who's a traveler, then they mention regarding that the person travel could be one if there's difficulty in that travel. The person have a travel, but he's going to find that difficulty in that travel. He's traveling and he's have to walk from here to Birmingham. So that travel required a person have to walk from here to Birmingham. It's going to be difficult. So in that case, if that difficulty in the person should not fast. Should not fast. Because of the difficulty upon him. So if there's going to be a mashaqqa, difficulty in that journey, then a person should not fast. Then a second case that a person, it's a journey, but it's somewhat go from here to Birmingham on a coach. He's a traveler. So for him to see, the ulama discuss as to, is it best for him to fast or not to fast? Tafdeel, which is better? If he choose, so that if he's going by coach, he's not driving, he's being driven. Then in that case, the fact that he's a musafir, he has the option to break his fast. As for what is better to fast or not to fast, based upon the way of the situation, then that's with him. Of those who give precedent that a person should fast because the ease of the journey, and those who mention that the person is allowed still not to fast.
Is there evidence for that person having the option?
The Prophet is that you have case of the Prophet is that he traveled and he and just a few other people were not fasting. And most of the people were not fasting. You understand? So it showed that, and you have cases that he was traveling and with others, and at some point he took something and drink in front of everyone. So it shows that the person have the option as to what he may deem. So which is the preferred option, then that's the next, then is whatever the person might choose to fast because of wanting to, he sees that's best, or he choose not to, it's with him. Without whichever option, to the person is blameworthy. So whichever option he takes, he's not blameworthy. Then you might find a case where the person, a case of safar, the person at Shabbat, he goes back his job, that he travels a lot. He's a bus driver. When I say bus driver, then he goes from one city to another. He drives coaches. So he's a coach driver. So he's routing every couple of days. He'll be out of town. He travel from here to Leicester. Then one day he has local routes. Some days, other days he travel out of town. That person, he has the option as a coach driver to fast or not to fast, even though it's occurring repeatedly in the month of Ramadan. So his schedule, for example, he has 20 trips. That will mean he'll be out of traveling 20 days of Ramadan out of town. He's a musafir. He has the option to fast or not to.
How do you understand وَأَن تَصُومُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ?
But it's khayrun lakum. So it's better, but it doesn't mean.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes. So I said it should have the option. Let us give the scenarios. So I said what is best
In that situation.
in that situation, he can fast and doing what is best, or but if he choose not to fast, then he still have that option, even though it's not much difficulties. But because his case is a repeated case, he still have the same option. Nam?
Just like a pilot.
It doesn't say anyone in that scenario. The person may be a coach driver, he may be a person, a delivery driver. You understand? Maybe a delivery driver, he deliver thing from one city. Sometimes his journeys, his trip, delivering thing may take him from one city to the next city. Now, so the same, all of them so are a cab driver. May have a job that take him out the city. Or he drives from city to city. All of those people fall in the same category because they are musafir. But fasting.
And is there qada as well?
Hey, that's make qada. For all those cases, that's qada.
So what if someone picks traveling Ramadan for siyaha? That's it. They don't have to do it. They just choose the option. They just want to travel Ramadan.
So a person said that the fact the person decide that in Ramadan I'm going to be the time that I'm going to go on a holiday. Now, the fact that they're on the holiday may not be the best option, but the fact that a person is a musafir, now on his holiday, then he has the concession of musafir. Now,
How if he does it purposely so he doesn't fast?
the person who choose that trip, then he knows that he's going to miss out on fasting. Now, so I said, but the fact that, you understand, he's a musafir, he has that option. What I must say, you might see it as maybe not the best option or the best time to travel. But say you might find a person, okay, that I want to go to from here to Mecca for Umrah. And he's a musafir. And he'll spend 3 days, 2 days in Mecca, or a few days in Mecca. As a musafir, he has the option of what? Even though he's in Mecca. Because he's still a class as a musafir.
What is the case with someone as he's got the option, obviously, to fast, but he's fasting, as the brother said, to avoid the fasting, let's say in summertime, and you know what, I'm going to do qada in winter.
That's between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As for his niyyah, we said we're not here to judge the person's intention. The ahkam is based upon what is apparent. What we see is that a person traveling in Ramadan, that's all we see. You understand? So he's still classed as a musafir. If his intention is to that and to that, that's between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Sheikh Omar, is Hilal al-Safar, when he actually gets to the place, the next day, he still has the option, or is during the actual Safar?
During the Safar, he has the option without khilaf. When khilaf as to how much time is the person still considered to be a musafir, depending on the duration of his trip. You understand? So you have that's the next but we're saying as a general musafir, he comes on as for the time span, he's in his journey. They might have there's a khilaf between the ulama. Is it above 4 days? You understand? You have that discussion. As they said, as long as he's said to be a musafir, so you have that discussion. As ta'deed, as safar, muddatu safar. Hey, salat.